Now let's turn to China. It's been 1 year since the end of the lockdown in Wuhan. That was how the day was marked exactly a year ago. It was, of course, a huge moment for the 11 million people who call Wuhan home. And to remind you, coronavirus was first reported in Wuhan in December 2019. The city went into lockdown towards the end of January, and the strict lockdown stayed in place for 76 days. Well, China was initially criticised for what some said was a slow reaction to reports of this mystery illness. But once China acknowledged that it existed and was a problem, the authorities cracked down hard. They effectively sealed off Wuhan from the rest of the world. And you may well remember these images from the time. The authorities built several completely new hospitals in a matter of days. Well, the official data appears to justify some of those measures. If you look at this graph, the number of recorded COVID cases in China spiked in February last year, dropped off in March, and it's stayed low since, so no second or third waves. The latest figures show that China has had just over 100,000 recorded infections and under 5,000 deaths in total through the pandemic. And with the exception of small regional lockdowns, China as a whole is just about back to normal, which begs the question, how has it managed this virus so successfully in the last year? Here's our Beijing correspondent, Robin Brandt.
China's strategy from the very beginning was essentially a national lockdown. There was no one on the streets here in Shanghai for a couple of weeks. Wuhan was the most severe example. That city was locked down. People there shut out from the rest of the world. After that, they closed the borders. Getting in and out of this country for over a year has been very tough. And then China's been super vigilant. And it can do that because it has infrastructures in place, administrative infrastructures, Communist Party committees in workplaces, in compounds, dealing with just a couple of hundred of people. It has the enforcement mechanism in place, a vast police network as well. And then also, and most importantly, digital infrastructure, health apps on phones monitoring people's status. The scale of China's success, and it is success in containing COVID, has been absolutely staggering. An outbreak in Qingdao, that's a city on the east coast just north of here last year, they tested 9 million people for COVID in 5 days. A similar outbreak in Kashgar in the west, they tested almost 5 million people in a week. Now look, they haven't had to deal with much dissent because the truth is they contained it here and things got back to normal. That means people are very fearful of COVID coming back. So pretty much everyone is playing along.
Well, 1 year on from the end of lockdown in Wuhan, local and national media are praising the return to normal life and the economic recovery the city has seen. People's Daily, the biggest newspaper in China, which is run by the government, even shared what you might call an inspirational tourism commercial for Wuhan. Here's some of it. You get the idea. Now, let's be clear. China isn't completely out of the threat of COVID. It's reported its biggest daily jump in COVID-19 cases in more than 2 months. That was this week. The city of Rili, on the border with Myanmar, is currently experiencing an outbreak. Around 80 people have COVID symptoms. We think around half are being treated. By China's standards, that's a large outbreak, and the Communist Party chief in Rili has been removed from his post over what's being called a serious dereliction of duty. Well, our China media analyst, Kerry Allen, has been telling us how China manages these outbreaks.
Well, as we're seeing at the moment from this latest outbreak in Rili, which is a city on the border with Myanmar, China, as soon as it sees one case, there are lockdown measures in place. And there are more than 100 cases that have been reported and growing over the last week. But very much what's happening is that these areas, people are not even allowed to leave their houses. So volunteers come round, they do testing within people's homes, they bring food. And the idea is that the cases get down to zero and then that area can open up again. But it will normally take a number of weeks for them to stay at zero before that happens.
And we've only a minute, Kerry, but where have they got to with the vaccine rollout, please?
They've got very far, so they're still the second country. There are more than 149 million doses that have been given, but China's averaging about 3 million, 4 million a day. So in a very short space of time, it is going to overtake the US. It says that it has capacity to deliver 10 million at the moment, but some people are still wary, so it's about 3 to 4 million.